We've been on this journey of, this past few months, we've been on a journey of what that we talk about as reclaiming Jesus' message for everyone. In the sense that for many people of both of faith and not of faith, that the places we've come from, we don't always feel like the church has helped us always, and we've forgotten kind of what it's about. And so we've wrestled with that. And what does it mean that God is really concerned about the world and about everyone, that we don't have all the answers, and that's okay, and that what God really invites us to is living in the world, this invitation to the kingdom God has given, where everyone belongs and no one is left out. But right now we're exploring the sense that not only is that a new thing that in some ways the church has come to, and what's been called the emerging church movement, and that we've been exploring, but it's also an ancient thing. And I shared last week as Bridget has shared, you want to connect, many of us feel like we want to connect to a church that it hasn't been like some of the ways we've experienced the faith journey and places that people have gathered. But we also want to know there's a connection with the people of the past who have also walked this, and many of those who have gone before us have things to offer us in this journey. And so we want to explore our journey in that. And so we're going to be doing that this week and in the coming weeks. And this week we're exploring a way of seeing as we explore this journey of how then shall we live. I want to start that journey by watching a clip from a movie that many of you may recognize here. If you could bring that up. It's in the computer this week, Brian. Sorry, man. I need a little volume.
How are we going to find them? Maybe we should just pray for sure. So I went to church every Sunday. Sometimes Lieutenant Dan came too, though I think he left the praying up to me. It's funny Lieutenant Dan said that, because right then, God showed up. Now me, I was scared, but Lieutenant Dan, he was mad.
Entire shrimping industry has fallen victim to Carmen and has been left in utter ruin. Speaking with local officials, this reporter has learned, in fact, only one shrimping boat actually survived the storm.
Louise, that's fast.
After that, shrimping was easy. Since people still needed them shrimps for shrimp cocktails and barbecues and all, we were the only boat left standing. Bubblegum shrimps, what they got. We got a whole bunch of boats, 12 G's, big old warehouse. We even had hats that say bubblegum on them. Bubblegum shrimp. It's a household name.
Hold on there, boy. Are you telling me you're the owner of the Bubba Gump Shrimp Corporation?
Yes, we got more money than David Crockett.
Boy, I heard some whoppers in my time, but that tops them all. We were sitting next to a millionaire.
Well, I thought it was a very lovely story. And you tell it so well, with such enthusiasm.
Would you like to see what Lieutenant Dan looks like?
Well, yes, I would.
That's him right there. And let me tell you something about Lieutenant Dan. Of course. I never thanked you for saving my life. He never actually said so, but I think he made his peace with God.
You know, last spring we went with the band to Florida, and actually Dave was there, his nephew, and I went to bubblegum shrimp. And it was some of the best shrimp I ever had. It was really good. I mean, I bet he's a millionaire. The central, the clip you're watching, the kind of the central character is Lieutenant Dan. How many of you have seen this movie before? Oh, wonderful. Okay, good. We got lots of people who've seen this. When we first meet Lieutenant Dan, where is he at?
Vietnam.
He's in Vietnam, right? And he has this history. And his family, what's happened in every war? Yeah, gloriously. Someone in his family has died gloriously in battle. You know, you see these different versions of Lieutenant Dan from the Revolutionary War on Fallen Mountain, right? And so that's what he's expecting, right? And they're in this battle, and he's wounded. Only he doesn't die because why? Because Forrest saves him, right? He runs. Forrest runs. And how does Lieutenant Dan feel about this? He's angry. He's supposed to die. He's supposed to die in glory. And instead, he's saved, and not only is he saved, he loses his legs. And so he's disabled. He feels he's a cripple. He feels that this is not the way it's supposed to be, and he's just angry about it. And you see that throughout the early parts of the movie. In fact, when you come to there when he's on the boat with it, Forrest, you know, how's he feeling about God? He's angry at God, right? So he says, you should pray. So he goes to worship. What's he doing at the worship service? He's in the back, right, with his Bible. Right? That's right. And he leaves the praying to Gump, right? And so they're on the boat, and they're catching more shrimp, and he says, you know, where's this God of yours? And then what happens? Yeah. And Forrest says what? Then God showed up, right? Then God showed up. And what happens to Lieutenant Dan out of that experience? Is it in the storm, yelling at God? And when it's over, where is he at? Yeah, he's on the boat, but he's come. Where is he in his own journey?
He's beginning to find peace within himself.
Yeah, he's come to this place of peace. He's found his peace with God. So where is it God meets him? Does it meet him in the glory on the battlefield? No, where does he meet him?
On the ocean.
On the ocean, in his pain, in the midst of his suffering and his struggle, that God meets him. And is Lieutenant Dan looking for God? No, God just shows up. God shows up. You know, I think this is a really interesting thing for us to wrestle with because, you know, where is it we meet God? We can click here, guys. Thank you. You know, we've been talking about, as we said, this journey and where we've come from. The space where we working. We have a little struggle. We locked up? Not too many times. We'll jump ahead. Here we go. You know, we actually talked last week that, you know, we come from a Lutheran background, but we're Christians who happen to be Lutheran. But we want to explore that as we say that we're connected to people who've gone before us. So we talked last week saying that Lutheran Christianity is four things. It's a way of seeing, it's a way of hearing, it's a way of teaching, and a way of following. Right? And talking about a way of seeing, we said last week that the Lutheran way of seeing is one, seeing the crucified Jesus as God in the flesh, God entering the darkness of our existence to gather us into a kingdom of wholeness, unity, and peace. And two, it's seeing God in all creation, but specifically in the water of baptism and the bread and wine of the Eucharist, or communion. And we're going to talk more about this later, but the first one, we're talking about the cross, and saying that if we want to talk about where we meet God, that the central symbol, the thing that we see most often as people of worship, as people who are Christians, is in the cross. This place where God says, or where Jesus comes down saying, Abba, or Daddy, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Right? saying that if we want to talk about where we meet God, that it's actually God who meets us on the cross. And if you click the next one, say that on the cross, it's here in the cross that God meets us. And God meets us in, click please, about one more. God meets us hidden in weakness, vulnerable, suffering, forsaken, dying. Now, hold it there. Actually, bring it back to one slide back if we could. So do we meet God in this place of glory? It's this place of pain where God is dying, it's suffering, forsaken, vulnerable, hidden in weakness. And I think this is often a difficult place for us. Now, sometimes we can overemphasize this. A few years ago, I remember the movie The Passion of the Christ came out. Have you ever seen that? Actually, we watched it. And it's a very interesting movie, especially it's done in Aramaic, which is the language Jesus actually spoke. Now, I don't speak Aramaic, I don't know about you, but it was kind of interesting to see this, the whole cultural thing. But the one thing that kind of struck me, and I think part of it is one guy I talked to, and I understand where some of this is coming from, but I disagreed. He said, Mother Teresa, you think of Mother Teresa, who is it that met God most in the place of suffering? Mother Teresa, who went with those who were dying in broken places, who were dying in the gutters, and she took them from that. He said, she would have been closer to God if she had spoken in tongues. And now, right. So I'm like, is that really the case? Is that where God is found? Or we don't find God either by saving ourselves through, and the many ways we try to save ourselves. Click on by our status, right? Right? You ever see that? By wealth, people try to do that. By knowledge, by consumption, by chemicals, by positive thinking, by correct religious doctrine, by self-help groups, by health foods or exercise plans. We try hard though, don't we? And I think we need to really be aware of this, that we have this tendency. I remember I met this guy once on the street when I was in college, and he was big into the New Age movement. And not that I have anything against it, but he was in this movement that said, you're always supposed to be happy. And so he was smiling constantly. And you ever met someone who's smiling on the outside, but inside they're really not always happy? It's scary, right? You ever see that? And we see that in the church a lot too. I worked in a hospital for summer as part of my seminary training, and I remember this lady who was dying of cancer. And she was going to die. And it was clear they tried everything. But her family had been watching this TV evangelist who was focused on was that if you have faith enough, you'll be healed. And if you're not healed, well, then the problem is that you don't have enough faith. And so they could never talk about her dying because that would admit that they were failing in faith. And all she wanted to do was talk about that's what was accomplished, and that God was there too. But they couldn't talk about it. And I think we do it without even realizing. I mean, how many of you watched the Badgers last night, or the Brewers? How many big into sports, or some team that you get, right? And when they win, how do you feel? Ooh, yeah. And when they lose, it's like, no. And my wife kind of teases me. She says, I can't win because if they win, you want to read about everything afterwards, and if they lose, But I don't know about you. If you've ever followed a team like that, sometimes actually it's better when they lose because you realize that that's not really what matters. I mean, I've done lots of funerals, and I feel bad when the main focus of someone's funeral is that they were a fan of the sports team. Is that what you want to be remembered for, or is there something deeper? And I think that often it's our suffering, our struggle that helps us to come to that place.